This is the biggest Potemkin village movement we've ever seen. These are the elites trying to burn everything to the ground, frankly, because they have nothing better to do, because it seems like it would be fun and romantic. Hey there, friends, fans, and foes of Dad Saves America. John Popola here, and I thought I would take this Friday, well, to dive a little deeper into the psychology, philosophy, and aesthetics of the radical forces in our politics. Last Friday, I did a video that dived into all kinds of things, including this meme right here, which Colin Wright has provided to us to understand the shifting Overton window, and its roots in the French Revolution and how those things are playing out today. It was actually our most successful Friday video ever. So, like any good former entertainment executive, why not do a sequel? And this is it. And we were delivered a perfect story to kick us off on Saturday, which was this from the Wall Street Journal: The Rise of America's Young Socialists. From the 2008 financial crisis to Mamdani, the most likely soon-to-be mayor of New York. There's a couple things worth noting about this story. For one, its primary hero, or I guess heroine if you want to go there, this person, Genevieve Rand. I'm going to read a little excerpt from the story of Genevieve because it is telling, and this is sort of an avatar for this entire movement. Rand's first taste of organizing came in 2019 after she moved to Ithaca, New York with a few $100s. She convinced about a dozen of her restaurant co-workers to start a union to boost wages. The restaurant soon closed, but the sense of solidarity she felt with her fellow union members remained. So right off the bat, you've got a little bit of cause and effect, and the maybe wrong lessons learned about cause and effect in that one moment politically. Rand was then transitioning her gender and felt especially vulnerable. Yet they stood by her and helped her find her new work. That was a really formative experience for me, she recalled. And I want to say this, I don't really have any interest in mocking this poor person. More about their, let's say, backstory is during the financial crisis, his, at the time, parents were really hit hard and ended up having to move in with his grandparents. Genevieve, they don't say what Genevieve's birth name was, but Genevieve got to see firsthand the economic turmoil that has really left a giant crack in the world and gave birth in a lot of ways to this new Jacobin revolutionary socialist movement with Occupy Wall Street and now AOC and Mamdani and the like. And as the story continues, you see that they don't shy away from calling themselves outright communists. Here's some more of the folks in this movement. You see there's a little newspaper with the hammer and sickle and a heroic picture of Lenin. This is the movement that is about to elect the mayor of our largest city under the guise of radical, transformative, transgressive revolution. So this all has echoes of the French Revolution, of course. And I think it's important to dig below the surface here because Robespierre and the French Revolution and this whole moment is the birth of a movement that frankly continues to this day. And that movement is called Romanticism. And the romance gets pretty weird. But let's start off here with my introductory book, which includes nice pictures. I didn't say I was a professor, folks. I'm just a guy. But Robespierre drew inspiration from a philosopher, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And so, as this book notes, it became clear that the legacy of Rousseau's proto-romantic views was destruction and anarchy, just as Kant's ideas had become linked to a metaphysical terror in the realms of philosophy. As the German poet Heinrich Heine put it, Maximilien Robespierre was nothing but the hand of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the bloody hand that drew from the womb of time the body whose soul Rousseau had created. The exhilarating nightmare of revolutionary chaos is a consistent undercurrent of Romanticism. Now, why talk about this. What is going on here? And what was Jean-Jacques Rousseau getting at? Well, Rousseau, among other things, believed in a certain kind of perfect human origin, that we, if not exactly a blank slate, that in a state of nature, we were perfect. We were a noble savage, and that we should return to that, that in this era of change and technology and alienation, what we really need to be our authentic selves was to return to our origins as a creature. From his book, The Social Contract, Rousseau notes that man was born free and everywhere he is in chains. And that idea gets echoed quite directly from another man whose book, The Communist Manifesto, this is Karl Marx, was published in 1948 at a second wave of revolutions that, frankly, kind of mostly equally failed like the first French Revolution did. But our good old buddy Karl Marx believed that man was everywhere in chains. In fact, he says in this book, you have nothing to lose but your chains in adopting communism. The art of the Romantic era was vivid and celebrated revolution, celebrated that visceral humanness of chaos and being in nature. And we see this romance for revolution, for wiping the slate clean, for transgressing a lot in our modern day. It is the animating force of the radical left that is increasingly the only force with any oomph on the left. Just to recount a couple recent examples. You have Luigi Mangione, who assassinated the CEO of United Healthcare, being treated like a sex symbol, amassing a large following of people who not only see him as a hero for taking on a healthcare oligarch, I guess, but as someone more almost saintly. This is not new in modern times. The Boston Marathon bomber got this treatment on Rolling Stone, like a rock star with his messy hair. I mean, he is a handsome guy, I'll give him that, but he's also a murderer, so doesn't really belong on the cover of a magazine. Another interesting meme going around is this picture of young Stalin, who is getting a fresh look because, well, again, look at how dashing he is. Look at the romance in his eyes. Not quite romantic when you get a little older. This is part of romance, this hyper sexualization, this extreme sense of embracing arousal, embracing emotion, putting emotion first, putting enlightenment and rationality second. That is the ethos of the Romantic era, an era that, frankly, we are still in, for better or worse, mostly for worse at this point. The hits keep coming. Ted Bundy, similar treatment. And of course, Jeffrey Dahmer, horrendous, nightmarish, transgressive to the core, and got a deeply disturbing multi-part Netflix series. I'm sorry to say I watched and left me kind of scarred. But the most recent instance of this romanticism of violence and revolution comes from some of the treatments of Charlie Kirk's assassin and his relationship with his trans roommate.
Talking about a love-torn child, a kid. This is probably his first real relationship, and somebody was disparaging the person that he loved. He sat on that building for 30 minutes before he took the shot. Why did he wait until the first word trans came up? Then he took the shot. You think he heard it? He could hear it? I think he could hear it. I think he also, I don't believe he was motivated politically. I think this was motivated emotionally.
This isn't the only instance of this. It's weird. He killed a man in front of his kids. Who cares if he had any kind of romantic, what are we talking about here? But it actually gets even more explicitly weird in this segment.
We have seen an alleged murder with such specific text messages about the alleged murder weapon, where it was hidden, how it was placed, what was on it, but also it was very touching in a way that I think many of us didn't expect, a very intimate portrait.
It was very touching in a way some of us didn't expect. What are we talking about here?
expect, a very intimate portrait into this relationship between the suspect's roommate and the suspect himself, with him repeatedly calling his roommate who is transitioning, calling him my love, and I want to protect you, my love. So it was this duality of someone who the attorney said not only jeopardized the life of Charlie Kirk and the crowd, but was doing it in front of children, which is one of the aggravating circumstances of this case. And on the other hand, he was, speaking so lovingly about his partner. So a very interesting and, as Pierre said, riveting press conference, David.
Interesting, riveting, heartwarming. This is romance. This is romanticism. This is romanticism with this extra layer of transgressive sexual oddity wrapped up in it. This is at the heart of what's going on in this radical left movement. And it's important to look this stuff in the eyes, especially as parents, because our kids go off to school and soak in this kind of philosophy. These are the modern examples. They aren't new in our times. Bonnie and Clyde, the bank robbers of the Depression era. Well, in some ways, they got the ultimate treatment at the perfect time to cement them as romantic heroes. And that, of course, is the Bonnie and Clyde movie from 1967, The Summer of Love, the first modern birth of this romantic free love movement in the 1960s. As a longtime promos guy, I will say we've gotten a lot better at doing trailers over the years. Listen to the music. Oh, the romance. They loved each other. They're young. They're in love. They kill people.
Well, I'm Miss Bonnie Parker, and this here's Mr.
By the
Clyde
biggest
Barrett.
Hollywood
Robbed
stars at the time.
banks.
That's love. That's romance. That's the original true romance. This idea, this fixation actually has a word, and that word is hybristophilia, the phenomenon characterized by sexual interest in and attraction to those who commit crimes. All of these examples I've given have a word born of a man named John Money. In fact, it is also referred to as the Bonnie and Clyde syndrome. And you see it right here in the Wikipedia. Manifestations of hybristophilia include the romanticization of criminals, especially serial killers. If you're wondering, where have I heard this name John Money before? And why does this seem connected to this broader story? That's because John Money is a turbo transgressive super creep. He is a monstrous villain. He is the man who is responsible for coining the terms gender role and sexual orientation, and trailblazed transgender medicine by doing horrendous things to a poor young boy who was, I'm not going to get into the details here. I encourage you, if you want to know about this guy, to look him up. I think I encourage you. It's dark stuff, but we are going to a dark place later in the video, so you are being warned right now. But John Money is a sexual weirdo. He is a Dr. Mengele type character, and I say that seriously. He really is. He has victimized people. They have taken their lives as a result. He's a monster, but he was good at coining terms, let's say. This brings us to this other part of this romantic philosophy of Jean-Jacques Rousseau that morphs into modern and postmodern weirdo stuff. And that is the desire to overturn everything, to lay waste to all of the traditions of our society. And Mom Donnie, who is about to become mayor, is part of the Revolutionary Guard in our country. That is being organized by the Democratic Socialists of America. And you can get a sense of the kind of stuff that they consider important to move forward with by watching the videos they put up online, like this one.
And on that revolutionary horizon, want to perform abortions in a church, but before it's all said and done.
The only real difference between marriage and prostitution is the price and the duration of the contract.
The only real difference between marriage and prostitution is the price and duration of the contract. Hear that? This is what these people think about the founding institution of our society, marriage.
We can fight for family abolition. We can imagine family abolition because we have seen Black women do it.
We can fight for family abolition. And this is where it gets weird. Because we've seen Black women do it? Okay, what are we talking about here?
Because we have seen these indigenous communities do it.
But, to me, it is the institution of marriage can only exist alongside the criminalization of sex workers.
So the future mayor of New York City, folks, coming out of this crew.
Children whose parents are unable to provide either housing, food, or safety are treated as if they have committed a crime. So kids themselves are treated as if they have committed a crime if they're not born into a family that can support them.
In addition to abolition of family policing, you argue for abolition of the family in general, and say that the institution of the family acts as part of the carceral system in the way that it reinforces children as property.
I think the left is constantly surprised at how few people are, ready for revolt.
The left is constantly surprised by how few people are ready for revolt. One of the reasons for that is because the agents of revolt, both now and then, are people like this. They all are like this. The French Revolution, the revolutions in 1948 across Europe, some of which had good intentions, like overthrowing monarchy in favor of something like more democratic republics. The Bolshevik Revolution, to some extent Mao's revolution, the agents of this change are not a proletarian army of workers. They are entitled, overschooled, relatively well-off elites who drive all of this. This is the biggest Potemkin village movement we've ever seen. These are the elites trying to burn everything to the ground, frankly, because they have nothing better to do, because it seems like it would be fun and romantic.
Despite, the extremely dire conditions that we're in that keep becoming more and more dire every day.
Women and children are the most harmed by capitalism, but also women and children are the architects of their fate.
So when we talk about family abolition, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the abolition of that economic unit. For me, that liberatory horizon is to say it is a horizon in which all of our material needs are taken care of by the collective.
The liberatory horizon after abolition of the family, which you can find in this guy and in this stuff, is that all of our needs are met by the community. One of the few good French philosophers, from my perspective, Frédéric Bastiat, said that the state is the fiction by which each of us gets to live at the expense of all of us. It is a fallacy of composition, definitionally, that we can all live and have all our needs met by everybody else but us. Now, if we all are thinking that way, which one of us is doing all that work? Because all of us are having all of our needs met by everybody else. I don't know about you. I've never washed a rental car, so I don't know how this is going to work. And it can't. It can't work. It doesn't even work in theory. But I've done other videos debunking all the fallacies and fake economics of Marxism itself as an economic system. This is something, frankly, deeper. This aesthetic, this zeal for revolution is something far, far deeper psychologically. And it points, frankly, to something kind of broken. And that brokenness just continues in the mainstream of our institutions, because that seems like well, those are just radical weirdos still wearing masks in 2025. Who cares? And yeah, maybe Mondani came out of that, but maybe he's not really that. I don't know. What are you doing? Well, the New York Times a couple years ago had this massive article posted decrying that the maternal instinct itself is a myth created by men. This is madness, Rousseauian madness, continuing to be propagated in our modern days by the leading lights of our elite institutions. But it does get a lot darker. And Colin Wright, who gave us this great meme, has been covering some of this darkness for a long time. And among it is this: sociology journals are normalizing the sexualization of children. This attempt to use the disordering of our relationships, of marriage, of the relationship between men and women, and of the relationship between adults and children is so dark and so grotesque that I almost hate to do this video, but we have to understand what's going on, that this is very widespread in the academy, that the reason why we're seeing people like Genevieve Rand become so disordered and so broken and so in search of a transgressive rebirth is because the institutions are captured by this. This article, this paper, Childhood Sexualities on Pleasure and Meaning from the Margins. This is published. Let me just read a little bit of this. I don't even want to. It's so horrible. Sexuality scholarship marginalizes childhood sexual pleasure, positioning children as vulnerable subjects. We interrogate dominant narratives of sexual innocence that suppress young people's desires and show how children negotiate pleasure and meaning amid intersecting hierarchies of age, race, gender, and class. We argue that rejecting adult-centric, adultist approaches to sexualities and attending to childhood pleasure is indispensable for an inclusive sociology and just sexual futures. Now, if that sounds like a bunch of commie woke gobbledygook, it's because it is, but it is mainstream among the entire field of sociology and beyond. This was published on the American Sociological Association, and this is part of a series called Sex and Sexualities. And it's the cutting-edge sociological research on sexualities by fostering space for rigorous, intersectional, interdisciplinary, transnational, feminist, and critical research. This is what happens when your kids go to school and study any of this stuff. This is what they're soaked in. This is how radical all of the schools of education are that teach every single teacher in the public school system and most of the private school system. That's why it's important to look this stuff in the face as a parent. You need to know this is where you send your kids into if you're not being really, really careful. And they come out this poor person, confused, committed to radical politics that will destroy the society, and on a path to being mutilated by doctors for profit. I'm going to go a little bit back in time for a moment because, again, this stuff has its modern roots in the academy with philosophers like Herbert Marcuse. Marcuse wrote a book, Eros and Civilization, in the 1950s, a philosophical inquiry into Freud. He is one of the bedrock thinkers of the era of free love. Here he is with radical terrorist Angela Davis, who is now rehabilitated in the eyes of academia, and even here in Texas has been celebrated as an important figure in our, I guess, civil rights movement, sorta. I don't know why, just because she's a communist. Herbert Marcuse and the Student Revolts of 1968. This is again in Jacobin magazine. German philosopher Herbert Marcuse was a leading source of inspiration for the New Left in Europe and the US during the 1960s. In this lecture from May 1968, this attack vector of our identity, of our sexual identity, of sexual behavior is deep and dark And it goes really, really deep. And it is one of the things that gave rise to the 1960s that we feel like we're reliving today.
Morning in Haight-Ashbury. Young professionals zip off to work with coffee in hand. Hard to imagine, 50 years ago, this was ground zero for a phenomenon known as the Summer of Love.
The best guess is 100,000 people headed for the Haight that summer.
They were mostly young people who streamed nonstop for 3 months in 1967 into a tiny neighborhood the size of only 0.3 square miles. As to why San Francisco?
It had a freewheeling bohemian history.
Why the Haight?
It was cheap.
And why 1967?
It was just this explosion of ideas and protests and music and drug, sex, and rock and roll.
Turn on, tune in, and drop out.
Dr. Timothy Leary, a psychologist who had been fired from Harvard University, was undoubtedly the most internationally conspicuous prophet of the psychedelic revolution.
Drop out. Tune in with natural things. Take off your shoes. Get back in tune with God's harmony. Surround yourself with beauty and sacred objects. You can't get caught in the conforming, rote lockstep, which we call American society.
It's this. Tune into nature, which is good. There's kernels of truth in all of this stuff. And with Romanticism, emotion is important. Being connected to nature, being connected to yourself, those are valuable things. I'm not saying they're not. I'm not saying we should be entirely stoic robots. But we should understand where this stuff is coming from and the kissing cousins it has, sometimes literally.
Summer of Love ended in October with a mock funeral. Called the Death of the Hippie, participants carried a casket through the Haight and set it ablaze in the Panhandle. And soon, meth and heroin flowed in, targeting vulnerable kids on the street.
For the next several years, the Haight was kind of a very tough place to be.
It was more than the next several years, more like the next several decades, especially now, where you walk over desperately tragic people who are living their true self in the grips of addiction and sexual abuse. And that is something I have done a fair amount of work on the tragedy of homelessness in San Francisco and around the country in the name of often this kind of romantic philosophy. Isn't it romantic for people to live their truth? What they really need is housing first and harm reduction, which means give this poor broken person an expensive apartment in San Francisco and give them clean needles to do their heroin with, because who are we to judge? That's just a lifestyle choice. That is the kind of fake compassion at the heart of this romantic movement that we have going on to this day. But I've saved the darkest for last, because among the characters at the time back at the French Revolution was the Marquis de Sade. And guest and friend of the show, Rudyard Lynch, has said that he thinks that the Marquis de Sade might be the ultimate example of modern leftism. And to some extent, he is correct. The Marquis de Sade was a writer, a libertine, which is to say kind of a free love guy of his time, and truly diabolically grotesque. Among his writings was this 120 Days of Sodom, in which he describes barbaric and heinous sexual acts, including the of young boys. So why am I bringing this up? Because the Marquis de Sade, number one, has gotten the Hollywood film treatment, not even recently. So he's apparently fair game to be dramatized, and has been, by the likes of Oscar-winning actors. But even more creepily and bizarre, the French government, this is from 2013, has been trying to get their hands on the original of this book for over a decade. And recently, they finally got it. They finally bought this monstrosity for $4 million. The taxpayers of France paid for the state to buy the original manuscript of this book, of this heinous, revolting book, to keep in their archives as an artifact of their contributions to our modern chaos. All of this reminds me of a video that I saw a few years back, clipped, by a philosopher named Derek Jensen. He's actually a fairly far left guy, But when it comes to some of this transgressiveness, well, he brings the receipts. And he was speaking at a library in Eugene, Oregon, home to the University of Oregon. And the crowd is certainly populated by a mix of students, and as you'll hear, some activists/protesters. And what they're protesting itself is part of the story. So he is discussing here the transgressive nature of radical left-wing anarchism, which is, again, just another kind of communist variant.
One of the problems is, again, the sort of black and white thinking where just because there are some social norms that are oppressive, therefore all social norms must be destroyed. And that leads anarchism to some atrocity-inducing madness. For example, there is a long correlation between anarchism and support for
You hear the students starting to groan here? Pay attention to that. The students groaning is part of this, what makes this so shocking.
Wait. That's a beautiful line. Thank you so much for asking. How about something relevant? I've been talking about culture all day, and support of is not culture. Okay, so actually, it seems you're acting like this is a spurious connection. So we're going to play Jeopardy. We're going to play queer theory. We're going to play queer theory Jeopardy.
Queer theory Jeopardy. Here we are, folks. Get ready.
Okay, answer. Commonly called the godfather of queer theory.
Who is Foucault?
Who is Foucault?
I got it.
Okay, 100 points.
Another French philosopher, folks.
Foucault. Another way to ask this is who argued, no, I guess the answer would be, argued for the eradication of age of consent laws as in down to infants.
Who is Foucault?
Thank you.
Okay.
Who is Foucault? Foucault, postmodern historian, philosopher, radical, played a critical role, a central role in everything that we now hear as studies, critical theory, gender studies, the new postmodern left. He is a godfather, philosophically, of the Mamdani set. He is one of the most cited philosophers in this space. So just to give you a little sense of what we're dealing with here, how deeply institutionally the radical romantic psychopathy goes.
Next one. The author of the founding document of queer theory.
Who is Gail Rubin?
Who is Gail Rubin? What percentage? No, the answer is 50%. Question is?
The amount in that article that was a defense of specifically, quote, boy lovers, so men boys.
Oh. And since you're not believing me, quote, this is in the founding document of queer theory. Like communists and homosexuals in the 1950s, boy lovers are so stigmatized that it is difficult to find defenders of their civil liberties, let alone for their erotic orientation. That's in the founding document of queer theory.
Just for accountability's sake, this is Gail Rubin, the person who was advocating for this, was advocating for the normalization of this monstrous atrocity.
Oh, and she also compared, by the way, she compared to a preference for spicy food. The thing is, I have never heard of anyone who has to have years of therapy because they ate hot and sour soup. Okay, so up to 200. Now it is and queer theory for 300. That would be author of Macho Sluts. Author of Macho Sluts and Public Sluts. Pat Califia.
Derek Jensen is an eco-fascist.
You hear that? Derek Jensen is a fascist. These are students screaming obscenities and calling him a fascist for being critical of advocates for pedophilia.
So here's Pat Califia.
You're a homophobe.
Pat Califia. Oh, wait, just a second. I was accused of homophobia because I am against pedophilia.
Yes, right.
Who is it who actually makes the connections between that? Pat Califia has written, any child old enough to decide whether or not she or he wants to eat spinach, play with trucks, or wear shoes is old enough to decide whether or not she wants to run around naked in the sun, sit in someone's lap, or engage in some activity, by which she does not mean play doctor, she means with adults. And she's very clear about that because she also says that should be more and not less invested in children's lives.
They should be more and not less invested in children's lives than the family, actually, than the family that these people wish to abolish. This is Pat Califia. Just so you know, just so you're aware who this person is. Let's keep going.
Okay, so we're at 300. 400 is the most famous queer theorist of today. Answer. No, it is not Judith Butler. Who is Judith Butler? Okay, Judith Butler is the most famous queer theorist of the day.
We see you, all of you supporters here, who do not care about trans people's lives.
You hear that? We see you, all of you people who do not care about trans people's lives. I mean, we'll leave the non-functional grammar of spoken English aside. This is the pushback. You're somehow a bigot if you point out that is monstrous and that these people have actually just written in their own words what they've written in their own words.
So Judith Butler wrote, so I keep adding this qualification. When is a violation, suggesting I think there may be occasions in which it's not. Why would I talk that way?
We see you.
Well, I do think that there are probably forms of that are not necessarily traumatic, and which gain their traumatic character by virtue of the consciousness of social saying that they produce. Yeah, that's Judith Butler. That's one of the queer heroes.
Here's Judith Butler. You can find countless videos that treat this person like a legitimate scholar and like someone that should be taken seriously, instead of someone that's been an advocate for monstrosities, including from organizations that, frankly, I'm shocked to see. Like Big Think has a video of Judith Butler talking about gender as if it's not a crank talking about the flat earth. But worse, because it involves actual victims of real people. Shocking.
Okay, now we have for 500, we have the last one in the queer theory impact. The answer is queer theorist who has spoken out strongly against
Zero. Who is no one.
Who is no one, not a single one. Because the entire thing is based on transgressing. Yeah, I know, dear God.
This is what we're dealing with, folks. This is what we're dealing with in the ideology that's led to Charlie Kirk's death, in the movement that's trying to get radical communists elected into major seats of power and trying to spread itself throughout our country. We have to take this seriously. We have to understand what it is. We have to understand what it is somehow without being so hyperbolic that we discredit ourselves, which is hard with this stuff because it is hyperbole. It is shocking. But I feel as parents, we need to know this. We cannot be ignorant of the kind of environment that higher education and increasingly K through 12 is for our kids. The kind of ideas, the kind of philosophies, the ethos, the aesthetics, the vibes of the place are this stuff. And we can't stand for it. We can't let it continue. We have to attack it. We have to tear this part down. This is the radical revolution we need now. It's not transgressing against the family. It is not redefining sex in a way that violates everything that every normal person feels down to their very bones. It is this. It is the people pushing this on our kids. We have to fight it. We have to stop it. And then we have to remember that it will never die because it has been with us for hundreds of years. It goes back to the 1800s with Romanticism. It goes even further back. It goes all the way back to the Greeks. So because it will never die, we have to be ever vigilant. That is the biggest call to action I can offer on this. It is understand what we are up against. Let me know what you think about this. Was this helpful? I know this was hard to watch, but does it help you understand the context for our times? Does it help you understand maybe what your kids are starting to say to you right now as they've been in school for a little bit and are starting to get some of this messaging? Because I know that's happening for you. It's happened for me. And let me know in the comments. Thank you for showing up. To all of you who are new here, I hope this met your expectations coming out of last week's video. And if not, let me know in the comments. And of course, head over to dadsavesamerica.com where we've got more resources, links to the research and videos. Have a great weekend.